Are you a person of sophisticated taste? Do you pride yourself on your ability to identify bouquets and aromas in the finest of wines and spirits? Do you find yourself whiling away the hours with your personal library of obscure French cinema? If so, then how did you find this channel? And do you accept my apology? Right, the rest of you, if you're looking to expand your mind and perhaps develop some sophistications of your own, it turns out that you don't need to have an acquired taste for caviar or wear a top hat on a regular basis. In fact, you don't even need to give up your hobby of being a #pro gamer. Modern games now incorporate everything from literature and mythology to philosophical explorations and psychological studies. They are no longer just side-scrolling beat-em-ups with no emotional complexity. They're now side-scrolling beat-em-ups with existential crises built in. So acquire some fine china and collect your National Trust membership, because I'm Ashton from Triple Jump, and here are 10 great video games that expand your mind. Number 10, Death Stranding. The conversation about whether or not video games qualify as art will continue until the end of time, or until all of the wrong people grow too old and feeble to argue against it. But Death Stranding is perhaps the closest thing the medium currently has to abstract expressionism. No, it's not visually abstract, but it's abstract in just about every other way. Following Sam Porter Bridges as he delivers various packages between the remaining post-apocalyptic cities of the world, Death Stranding hinges around various ideas, such as the concept of death being stranded on a metaphysical beach, invisible ghost creatures, unborn babies in jars, and rainfalls of liquid time. Is that abstract? I assume it is. I'm not entirely sure what I just read even now, and even saying this is causing arguments in the comments as we speak. Those who don't get it find Death Stranding annoying and perplexing, and those who do get it find it to be one of the most moving and profound narratives in gaming. That's quite a difference, and for the rare few who go from bafflement to enlightenment, Death Stranding is one strong example of minds being expanded through gameplay. Number 9, The Stanley Parable. Philosophy is a popular area of conversation among those of good breeding and high intellect, especially when it comes to discussions of free will and the inherent human need to break the rules. While Death Stranding leaves you to find your own way through the world, The Stanley Parable deposits you on a linear path and demands that you do not follow any other paths. You do not follow those other paths. Don't even look at them, and don't even look at the man behind the curtain, I swear to God! As anyone who has faced a decision in a game will testify, there's something tempting about defying the right course of action. And with an all-seeing, all-knowing narrator telling you exactly which direction to go, it wouldn't be so bad to quickly stick your head around the other door just to see what was in there, would it? You could say that the Stanley Parable deconstructs the concept of linear narratives in video games, the compulsion to devise simple instructions, and the very existence of humanity's free will. Or you could say, it's fun to make the posh man say funny thing. I'd know which one I'd go for. Did you get the broom closet ending? That's my favourite. Number 8, all of David Cage's games. Ooh, it's a mind-expanding wildcard entry! We tried to limit our choice here, we really did, but between Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls and Detroit Become Human, they all seem to exist in the same limbo of, is this art or is this utter rubbish? Cinematic, kind of grim with deep and meaningful themes and plots, interspersed with bizarre control gimmicks and stilted dialogue, they are rather like a combination of prestige television and a performance art piece. Cage strives to make games that really make you think, whether it's a tense whodunit search for a serial killer with wonky QTEs, or a dystopian narrative about robots with even more wonky racism analogies. To quote Cage himself, games should be about what the players feel, not what they do. Similar to Death Stranding, the most interesting thing about these games are the intense discussions and profound thoughts you will have about them later. In going through Cage's catalogue, which is full of games that focus on serial killers and the police, you can almost see into the psyche of the man himself, and it's impossible not to try and piece together the man's worldview, using it as an opportunity to see through another artist's eyes. Don't ask me where Cheese Catastrophe starring Speedy Gonzales fits in though. Probably best if we don't know. Number 7, Shadow of the Colossus. A PhD in the classics isn't a requirement for an educated life, but at least a vague understanding of the ancient world is a useful plus. To wit, the Colossus of Rhodes was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, a 108-foot statue of the sun god Helios standing at the harbour of Rhodes, before a massive earthquake toppled it, snapping it at its knees. The colossi in Shadow of the Colossus are somewhat different to the legendary statue, in that they are alive, but both follow the same age-old adage: the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Playing as a young hero, you are tasked by an unknown entity to destroy the various living statues across the land, returning the soul of a young woman to her body. With a memorable art style and a highly ambiguous plot, it explores the morality and cruelty of hero stories, and it will cause you to reconsider the many times at which you took the words hero and villain at just face value. It is also just a very good game, so go and play it. Number 6, Apotheon. Following the themes of classical mythology and history, Apotheon is the thinking man's god of war. The art of many pieces of ancient Greek pottery was known as the black figure style, showing a near silhouette of black and white figures playing out scenes and historical events. That is the art style that Apotheon adopts, side-facing limitations and all. You play as Nicandrios, a young man seeking revenge for the near destruction of his village. Hera, disregarding her usual policy of punish the humans for Zeus's antics, tasks him with killing her husband, whose growing hatred for humanity has caused Earth to fall into darkness. Nicandrios climbs Mount Olympus to kill the gods with the help of Helios. We've come full circle. All while various Greek myths play out around him, including Persephone in the underworld and Daphne's imprisonment within a tree. The game can play a bit fast and loose with the actual stories, especially with Nicandrios killing the gods, but it's more entertaining than poring over Bullfinch's mythology, so it balances out. Number 5, Orwell. Ugh, you can't say anything these days, am I right? It's just like 1984. Well, not really. People telling you you're a jerk isn't a violation of your rights. Otherwise, I would have already imprisoned everyone who's ever been mean to me in the YouTube comments. But any discerning gentleman or gentlewoman would never assume that anyway, as they would have already read George Orwell's 1948 dystopian masterpiece. But what if you can't spare the time to read it? Well, the game Orwell demonstrates exactly what life would be like under an authoritarian surveillance state, tracking down national security threats and divergent ideas through the internet. Told in 5 separate episodes, you work as an investigator brought in by the party to investigate a bombing, using an experimental new surveillance system known as Orwell, which should probably be a red flag. You go through online profiles to discover connections between sites, individuals and organisations to root out political dissidents. Prevent more security threats. With the current state of the planet, it might not be the most escapist piece of media, but it's a decent crash course on what made the novel great, and games are much more difficult to dispose of down memory holes. Number 4, The Endless Forest. What could possibly be a better alternative to an art gallery than a video game literally made for an art exhibition? Commissioned by the Musée d'Art Modern Grand Duke Jean in Luxembourg, or the Modern Museum of Modern Art if you want to get English about this, the developers wanted to create a game that was in many ways a moving painting. Existing in various betas from 2003 until its final release in 2006, The Endless Forest very much lives up to its goal. You play as a deer, stuck with basic deer sounds and movement. You have no ability to speak with other players or any goals to fulfill. You're just a simple woodland critter after all. What are you expecting? Some kind of power to transform into the deer of your dreams? Oh. Right, well, still, The Endless Forest looks pretty, and it's one example of games finding their place in the visual arts discussion, which is nice even if you don't care about the adventures of a magical deer prancing through the forest. Number 3, Cuphead. A video game based on cartoons? Are you mad? And one about shooting people? This is not mind expanding at all! Well, don't you worry, my up-and-coming intellectual. Cuphead isn't a simple TV tie-in. It's based on the concept of the rubber hose animations of the 1930s, named as such because of how the characters' arms waggle and wave like garden hoses. Following Cuphead and Mugman as they set off to free themselves from a deal with the devil, you battle against sentient vegetables, ghosts, mad scientists, theatre performers, dragons, clowns, and a guy with a die for a head. The game was painstakingly designed, the frames drawn by hand and the backgrounds painted in watercolour, specifically to celebrate the unique imperfections of traditional animation. It's a loving adventure through a long discarded era of animation, and it's a chance to immerse yourself in what cartoons used to be like, before everything just decided to look like Family Guy or Rick and Morty. Number 2, The Witness. What's more mind-expanding than puzzles? Hopefully not a lot, considering that's all that The Witness offers. But what makes it stand out is how it offers these puzzles. The Witness doesn't involve any kind of reading, writing, or arithmetic. Instead, it simply asks you to guide dots through grid mazes, both on various screens and in the environment itself. This may not sound like a very mentally stimulating task, but that isn't where it ends. Throughout the game, you get to listen to various audio clips of the most well-regarded thinkers in history: Buddha, B.F. Skinner, and Albert Einstein, to name just a few. There is also a theatre where you can watch extracts from documentary series and Soviet-Italian alternative drama films from the 1980s. Think of it as a Cliff Notes version of your university-required reading. One optional puzzle involves holding the players hostage as they wait for the projection of the moon to travel across the screen over the course of 59 minutes, or while listening to an in-depth lecture about video game Easter eggs and the nature of wanting to find secret messages and puzzles in media. Call it a captive audience, if you will. While accompanying a simple puzzle game with these lectures and quotes might seem a bit pretentious, if you're one for introspective thinking and don't mind standing in one place for an hour listening to a lecture without pushing any buttons, then this is definitely worth a spin. And number 1, the Talos Principle. If to err is to human, then Similar to The Witness, the Talos Principle deposits you in a picturesque location and tasks you with completing various puzzles. However, unlike The Witness's simple line drawings, the Talos Principle gives you a physical maze with light connectors, jammers that look like those weird laser things you see workmen using at the side of the road, and companion cubes. Okay, that last one was a joke, but there is an actual companion cube hidden in the game, so I don't know what to tell you. Following the commands of the voice calling himself Elohim, the name of God in the Hebrew Bible, you unlock strange sigils. You read electronic logs and messages from other AIs in the world, steadily figuring out what this place is and what is going on. But what truly makes the game intellectually taxing is its exploration of the nature of humanity, combining philosophy, religion, and discussion about free will. Will you come out of the other end smarter? Well, I can't make any promises, but you'll at least have considered some big topics along the way. And isn't that enough? Oh, no, probably not. Good game though.